Okay, hello there. Yeah, my name's Vince. Screen name on TCO is VinceTUK. I'm one of the Manchester Mavericks that's at the latest Keyforge Celebrations. Basically did the Gormangeist run and got the record for that. We got that in 10 minutes 34 for the Nightmare run. What I thought I'd do is I'd do a quick video explaining how we did that, what kind of decks we took, but more importantly what kind of strategy we did to do it, because the individual cards in our decks didn't matter so much, bar the exception of a couple, which the Alliance pods were specifically chosen for. Most of them, they were just turned into tokens, didn't really matter. But the strategy of how I went through it did. I think it's also fair to say that over the course of the weekend, we probably did the most runs. I think we had something like 9 or 10 successful runs, and our strategy evolved over time. Coming into it, we had a very safe strategy that would pretty much lead to a win every time. In fact, we won every time, bar the sort of last few times when we were trying to go for speed only, which we had to scrub a few, when we took a more sort of riskier strategy. I guess a little bit of sort of history on this is that I used to play a load of games that had similar things. The old WoW TCG used to have their lairs, and the Warlord TCG by AEG used to have their Overlord challenges, which had very special decks that you had to try and work out like a puzzle in order to beat. And Gormangeist is very similar. It's a puzzle. You have to work out how to beat it. I'm going to assume not everyone's necessarily familiar with Gormangeist, but I'm not going to explain the full rules. I'm only going to explain really the ones that sort of matter. If you want to look at the full rules, they're there on the website for you to go and download. Okay, so talking about that, I'm going to start with a bit about the strategy of Gormangeist, how to defeat it. I will put the cards and our decks, and I'll put also our decks that we created in the comments so people can see them, but a lot of this is going to be talking about the strategy of this. So I guess the first thing to say, if you're not familiar with Gormangeist, is every who has one of these free cards, essences as they are called, cards will drain essence. If you lose all your essence, you can no longer draw. If you lose essence when you don't have any essence, that's it, it's game over. So one of the strategies is basically you have to manage this essence as well, and particularly when you're going about speed, is not to be afraid to get rid of it. It's a resource to be used. It only really matters when you go down to 0. I suppose what I should say is we did all our runs with 3 players. It's possibly faster if you do it on your own, but we basically did it with 3. That means that we have 3 essence each, but it does mean that we needed to, for our win condition, scales up. And the win condition is there's such a thing as dark essence. You win if the accumulator, which is the sort of bad guy for Gormangeist, has drained 4, if there's 3 of you, dark essence. But it can only drain dark essence when you've gone through certain steps. You can't just get some dark essence and have it drained straight away. You have to go through some certain steps first. So the trick is very much trying to get that dark essence onto people. And one of the things that's going to, and I'll explain why it comes later, but one of the things that was key to our strategy was to try and spread that dark essence so that every person had at least 1. So that meant that all of us had 1 dark essence by doing the things that give you dark essence, and 1 person had 2. That's not about survivability, that's about speed. We'll come to that later, but yeah, that's something to bear in mind as I start talking about dark essence and so on. So that's the essence, that's how you win or lose. The key card behind all that is this one, the Grim Reaper. And the Grim Reaper is in play basically pretty much all the time. As you can see, when it would die or get purged or whatever, it just comes back into what's called the archives for the Gormangeist. They're not quite the same as a normal player's archives. I'll talk about that in a moment. But yeah, this thing just basically keeps coming out and out and out and out. And it's got, when it reaps, if it could forge a key, usually 6 amber, it will drain an essence from the active player, the player whose turn it is, who's doing Gormangeist. So that's the main way you're going to get drained. So again, talking strategy-wise, certainly if you're playing safe, but also part of our runs was you just stop that. And one of the easiest ways to stop that is, of course, stop it reaping. And there are cards in the game that stop things reaping, that stop people readying, that stop. So the ones we used under pressure from the unfathomable. So if you put it under pressure on the Grim Reaper, it can't ready, which means it gets stuck like that, and it can't, and that's fine. Pretty much the rest of the game until we want it to reap in order to take the essence of us, at which point you kill it. And then it comes back into play and reaps and does what you want it to do at a timing of your choosing, rather than just an inconvenient time to kill you and finish the game. One thing I should note is that our run was done using the new Nightmare version of Gormangeist. This is the original Great Reaper. As I go through, I'm going to tell you about what happens in Nightmare mode that's different. So that's your normal Grim Reaper. The Nightmare Grim Reaper is this one, if you have a look at that. So 1 more power, 2 armor, and a capture icon on it when it comes into play. For us, this is not massively significant. We are not intending to kill the Grim Reaper much. We want to keep it on the board and locked down so it can't do its reap, at which point the capture doesn't really matter and its stats don't really matter until we try and kill it. Again, for various reasons that we'll discuss later, the difference between a 7 with 2 armor and a 6 is absolutely minimal to us. It's 2 attacks from one of our tokens. So there, that is that. A little bit of an aside, both of them you see have this symbol. There's another card that the Gormangeist starts with this symbol. This is a steal symbol that says at the end of your turn, as in the player when you're doing your player turn, it steals amber for each of these. Amber management is a real big part of this. If you get the Grim Reaper locked down, it's not really that big an issue. We had piles and piles and piles of amber. We gave it loads of amber in the end because it didn't matter because it wasn't reaping, so it didn't matter. But early on, yeah, you don't give it any amber you don't need to, so try and end your turn with no amber left. And there's ways to do that. We'll talk about that in a moment, but there's ways to do that. So yeah, basically most of the time the Grim Reaper stayed on the board, but stayed locked down for us, and that was part of our strategy. Playing it safe, but also helps in the speed runs too. So that's your Grim Reaper. What else have you got that you start with standard? Well, you have 2 locations at the start. Kind of card you don't really see in the basic game. You have this Endless Corridors card and this Grand Stairway card. Endless Corridors is fairly easy. It is on your turn, you can discard 2 cards. If you do, you take what are called the mansion cards, which are basically exploring the mansion, going from room to room, put them into play and flip it. On the other side, it says something very similar. If you have 3 amber or more, you can lose 3 amber. If you do, put a mansion card into play and flip it back. So you can see you can be constantly flipping from one side to the other, from one side to the other, putting out the mansion decks. Now, again, part of our strategy, part of anyone who's hope successful strategy on how to get through Gormangeist is to realise you don't actually need to necessarily do all the mansion cards, but this card is very, very useful. It's the way to discard cards from your hand and also to get rid of 3 amber. So as long as you can control your amber in multiples of 3, you can probably just get rid of it via this. But more importantly, discard 2 cards. This is actually not a hindrance at all. Certainly for us, and probably other people, what it means is you can lock yourself into probably only one house continually until you get the few off-house cards you want. So by discarding 2 cards, you discard the houses that isn't what your main house. For us, that was 2 decks with Brobnar, 1 deck with Saurian, because you're going to redraw them at the end of turn. So you discard those off-house cards that you don't actually like, and you'll probably get yourself some Saurian cards or Brobnar cards or whatever, or get to the splash cards you want quicker. So yeah, think about it in that way. You can have many mansion cards you never even look in. This card is what's keeping your amber control and also refilling your hand. Next one, Grand Stairway. If you're playing it safe, do not do this. Do not go up the Grand Stairway. Basically, going up the Grand Stairway, you burn 3 of your amber, and you basically flip the Grand Stairway, and it starts the endgame victory condition. Things will get very, very tough for you straight away as soon as you do that, and it doesn't get any easier until you win. So my recommendation is to anyone, don't do that unless you're ready and you know what you're doing. The deck in and of itself will sort that out for you if it wants to. Obviously, in the speed runs, occasionally we had to trigger it ourselves, just because we were at that point where we felt we were close to victory, and we needed to go to the next step, and we needed to get the end stage. We felt we'd only be in the end stage for a very, very short period of time, so we triggered it ourselves. And in the 10-minute run, that's what we had to do. So those are the 2 cards that stay in play all the time, or should I say, start with as your mansion cards. Let's talk about the mansion cards themselves. So your mansion cards are where you're going to get your Dark Essence from. I'll put them all over here. There are basically 3 of each kind, so there's Pile of Junk, there's Glowing Portal, Doorway, Puzzle, whatever. So they all get shuffled, they all come out. Every single one of them on the back side has 3 different things. I'll just flip it over this one, save the doorway, one of which will be your Dark Essence. That's your victory condition. So you want to find that and put it on your Archon so that when you get to the final end state, it's going to be taking this rather than your actual essence, and that's how you're going to win. There's then going to be a card that's pretty good for you, and then a card that's good for the deck. Now, this is not all the same on the other side. Not every mansion card is born equal. In the vanilla version of this, it is generally, we felt doing the puzzles was fine, doing the bookcase is fine, doing the door is fine. The others you tended to stay away from, because the negative of it, the negative card is often more powerful than the good card in those three. For instance, in this one, the good card is you can archive a top card of your deck. That's really not a big thing versus Gormangeist. Doesn't help you that much. Flying Broomstick, however, means it basically ready and then use the most powerful Gormangeist robot creature. It's probably going to get ready and use the Grim Reaper, which it can be disastrous at the wrong time, and it's going to be doing that every turn. So, you know, for instance, so that one, which is the pile of junk, if you're playing it safe, you tend to stay away from. On the speed runs, though, if you're trying to go for speed, you just have to do them and deal with it, because you're trying to get that Dark Essence as fast as possible. So you just, everyone that comes up, if you can do it, you do it, and just hope to get lucky. Obviously, we did on the 10-minute run. We did a 14-minute run before that. We weren't so lucky. That's just the way those cards are when they get shuffled. Talking about Nightmare mode, though, they don't just have the sort of 3 for each of the different 6 rooms. There's a whole bunch more that come in. Here you go. There's basically one more card for each room in Nightmare mode. And of course, if I flip them over, none of them are Dark Essence. So that's actually diluting your chance of getting the winning card even more. But you still got to batter through them. And these are all pretty bad. Some aren't too bad. Like the Power Spell I'll talk about in a moment is one of an existing card. Well of Memory, it's going to get rid of some of your cards. There's quite a few cards in this that either discard cards or purge your cards if you're haunted and so on. Don't worry about them. For us, it was like our strategy. Most of them are going to get into token anyway. You're only going to flip your deck once at most, so who cares if your cards are purged or discarded from the discard pile? They're just, you know, it's not a concern. This one's pretty bad. This one's Cursed Tomb. Basically, is if your non-Gormangeist creature doesn't have captured on it, it's destroyed. Well, if it is destroyed, sorry, it gets purged. If there are no creatures in play, you can basically purge this, but that means you've got to have cleared the Gormangeist board and every single player has no cards left. That's not a good state to be in. But this is basically going to be purging your creatures. Some of the creatures we have, like in the Saurians, the Legionary Trainers, this is really, really, really not good to have them purged. But again, it could be worse. We're only flipping the deck once or twice, so it's not a huge deal, but it is probably one of the worst ones. This one is a Mender. Again, the fact that it's got a playability makes it one of the few creatures in the Gormangeist deck that have playabilities. And it's purged top quality of a discard pile. Who cares? Not that bothered by that, as for reasons mentioned. But fully heal and ward each robot creature is annoying. Warding them is annoying. Part of our strategy is to basically control the board, control what creatures Gormangeist has. If they're warded, it just makes us have to play a little bit slower. Not necessarily that we're going to lose, but just makes us play slower, which is not good for us when we're doing a speed run. So yeah, that one, I'd say that one pops out of, if you ever look at it, pops out of Derelict Machine. So it's yet another reason to try and avoid that if we can, but you may not have the choice on a speed run. Curse of Forgetfulness is, yeah, fine, whatever. Purge the top card of my discard pile. Who cares? We're going to flip only a couple of times. The worst of them all, though, if it comes out, is this one, Curse of Confusion. At the end of your turn, exhaust each friendly creature of the active house. So for us, if we were going, say, Brobnar, and it was the player who has the Brobnar house first, it would also exhaust the other player's Brobnar creatures. Could be horrific. Even if that doesn't happen, exhausting, say, the Saurian player's Saurian, it locks them out of that house for a turn. This one was real bad. If you're trying to do a speed run, this just absolutely locks you down. So we didn't want to see that if we could avoid it. But, yeah, not necessarily. Say it's out of the bookcase, which is generally a more benign one up until the Nightmare mode. So those are the sort of Nightmare Mansion ones that get in, diluting the pool, making it harder to get your Dark Essence out of there by giving you basically a 1 in 4 rather than a 1 in 3, and some of these are real nasty, worse than what some of the other ones in there are. Okay, so that's the Mansion deck. That's how that functions. Going to quickly talk about the Gormangeist Adventure deck. Gormangeist has an adventure deck. It functions like its deck of cards. The way it works is at the effectively the end of its turn, it will put 3 cards in Nightmare. Was 2 in normal. It's 3 cards in Nightmare. 3 cards into its archive. At the start of it, so at the start of its turn, it then reveals those cards and plays through the archive in order. They can be actions, or they can be creatures, or upgrades, or artifacts. They are usually creatures. Then the next most common is actions. There's like a couple of artifacts and 1 upgrade. So I'm going to talk about those cards in a moment, just right now. So here's basically all the various different ones. So you can have Webster that comes out. Webster just basically protects the Grim Reaper and got an 8 strength. Brad, 5 strength, captures its own amber and can get bigger. Harvest Skimmer, 5 strength, Touchstone, Fortstone, Dusk Lamp. So Infiltrator's a special one because it comes into play on effectively the player's side and starts eating their army like a Scowly Caper. Okay, the only reason I'm going to put this all out is because we don't actually really care about most of these. For our strategy, again the way we did it fast, things like discarding your archives, we don't care. We don't have anything in our archives. Destroying an artifact, well, it could be minorly annoying, but our artifacts aren't the key to our victory, so we don't really care about that either. Beating up our guys with some of these that have prey on them, not too bothered. Our guys, we tend to run with tokens that all have 5 strength, so again, not a huge consideration as long as we play around which ones are targeting our weaker creatures and get those off the board first. But the one on these that really is key, that must die as soon as you see it, is this Shadis. It's 5 strength, so basically the Brutodon or the Berserker can take it out, but if it lives, then after fight, it basically destroys each non-Gormangeist upgrade, which is going to take that under pressure off your Reaper, and then you're back into danger zone territory. So that must die as soon as it hits table. Like this one, the Forecaster, is a bit annoying. It basically discards your cards from hand, but again, once we're starting to build that huge board, it doesn't really matter so much. But it's another target for killing, as is Mehmet if you have a useful artifact, such as we had a lens in one of our decks that was useful, and a couple other things. But basically, number 1 to kill target is get that Shadis dead. Most of these reap, you just don't care if the Gormangeist has 40, 50, 60 amber. If it's not reaping with the Grim Reaper, that amber is useless to it and it means nothing. So yeah, once you've got that Reaper locked down, don't worry about that. Kill the Shadis. Try and control the board as best you can. But you want to actually build up a board as big as you can as well at the same time. But yeah, kill Shadis is the takeaway from this. What about Nightmare though? That's just the basic ones. What happens in Nightmare? Well, there are a few more creatures, and they're a little bit more problematic, but nothing as bad as Shadis. So I'll take those out of the way. Have a look now at the Nightmare creatures. So here we go. Here's the 5 Nightmare creatures. Probably put them a bit too high. Let's bring them down again. There you go. So you've got 2 of these protective playmates. Utterly irrelevant. They're just a taunter that's either elusive or big, depending on whether you're haunted or not. Don't care. Just get smacked out of the way. You can even do clever tricks by putting 3 damage on it, and then waiting for it to go around to the person who's not haunted. So it dies. Mischievous, after reap, play the topmost creature in the discard pile. Again, don't really care. 6 strength is a bit of an annoyance, but by the time they come out, there's only 1. And the top creature it's going to be getting out, you're going to kill anyway. So Mischievous isn't really that. Misgrievous isn't really that of an issue. Dino, again, every Gormangeist creature gains, if it's destroyed, Gormangeist gains an amber. Who cares? Irrelevant. Have as much amber as you like. And this one is basically another one with a play effect that comes in. Not many of the original. The haunted ones do though. Play or reap. It's basically move all the amber from spectres to the Gormangeist pool and then fully heal each spectre creature. Not a big issue really. The Nightmare ones, not really that much of a problem, because fully heal, well, most things are getting smacked to death by a Berserker or a Brutodon anyway, so not going to have much damage. I should say Nightmare also puts in 3 of the original ones as well, like an extra Mimet, I think it is an extra Tribute Caller and an extra Infiltrator, who can, again, not massively significant. Right, what about the actions? The actions can be a little bit more problematic. So here's basically the different actions you get in the basic. Chunk restoration, and energy vampirism, blah, 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 blah. Let's talk through those. Most of these, which are the pip plus draw, so what will happen is it plays it, but it adds another card to the archive to be revealed this turn. Again, you don't really care about most of these. Chunk restoration, fully a robot, don't care. Destroy each of your creatures with amber on it. Well, if you're not exalting or capturing, you don't care. The only reason it may be useful is to voluntarily drain an essence in the end game, which can be useful for the person who's got 2 to finish the game quick, but otherwise who cares. Play the Grim Reaper from wherever he is. Well, he's usually in play, so kind of useless. Spontaneous Awakening, put the top creature card into play. Again, who cares, we're going to kill it. Right, now into the ones that are a little bit more problematic and require some thought. So, something for later, shuffle the adventure deck, discard pile into the adventure deck, archive 3. So it's going to have a good turn the next turn, but what it will also have done is the card that's called It's Time. Just show you that one. It's Time. This one starts in the discard pile. It's not in the deck to start, and the reason is because it will basically start that end game by flipping the stairway for you. So that's why this can be problematic if you're your first few runs, if you're playing it safe, don't know how to do things so much. This is problematic because it puts this in, so you can get an early end before you're ready. But for us, its most annoying factor was its time sink. Having to shuffle the deck, you're wasting seconds whilst you were doing that. Next one is Call Need. Ready and ward each robot creature. You may drain 1 essence instead. Generally, we're not that bothered about ready and warding. It's fine. We let it slide a lot of times because the board isn't that big, and a ward doesn't make a lot of difference. We just smack it out of the way with one of our creatures and then kill it with the last one. But again, we can use it to time that essence drain if the person with 2 essence draws that card in the dark essence stage. And then the last one is pretty much for us always was effectively an auto drain, which is return to rubble. If you're haunted, so obviously sometimes we weren't. If you got it early, great. But if you are haunted, it basically destroys each creature and artifact, and then shuffle discard pile into your deck. You may drain 1 essence instead. This is disastrous for us. Our entire strategy involves building a huge board, much bigger than Gormangeist board. That completely and utterly cripples it. So every time we saw that, if we were haunted, we just drained an essence, because we cannot have that resolve. So again, those are the sort of vanilla actions. When you go to Nightmare, there's only really 2 more that come in. The first one is an annoyance. Future is past. Basically, you swap your discard pile or your deck, shuffle your deck, discard your hand, draw 3 cards. So mostly for us, our discard pile and our deck, it's not a big deal. We're relying on tokens and creatures in play, so it's not like we have key combo cards or anything, so we don't really mind that you've done this. Draw 3 cards, sure, you reduced our hand to 3. Most importantly, this is a huge amount of time to do. So we tend to, like, when it gets flipped, the person just says, right, you start doing that. Everyone else will do the rest of the Gormangeist turn, because you're going to be taking, a minute or 2 to do this one. Very annoying on a speed run. Next one. This was just an auto drain. It's basically destroy each non-robot creature. You may drain 1 essence instead. If you do, purge it. Yeah, it's an auto drain. Just like person takes and drains the essence, get rid of that. Can't afford to have that resolved. Don't want to see it ever again, so just purge it. So those are the 2 nightmare cards. Okay. Right. So that's a bit about how its deck is. How does it play its deck? What's the strategy for doing it? Well, as I say, at the end of its turn, it puts 3 of those cards into its archives, and it then reveals them one at a time. The archives is it's a hand as well as archive, so any card you have that references hand also references archive. So what did we do? Well, one of our key values was a card in Unfathomable, or cards Phantom Reaver. So that reduces its hand size by 1, whilst the Phantom Reaver and the token are in play, which means it's archiving. How many archives in a turn is reduced by 1. So that puts it down to 2 or even 1. It can go no lower than 1. We had, I think, 3 Phantom Reavers across our decks. The idea was to get as many of them out as play to lower its so it's only going to producing 1 card a turn. The fewer cards it flips over is the fewer creatures we have to deal with, the fewer actions we have to resolve, so it's actually speeding us up as well as making it easier, because there's less things for us to do by reducing it to only 1 card. Now I should say, in these mansion decks there's a card, if you reeled, increases its hand size by 2, and there's another effect I'm going to talk about in a moment that increases its hand size by 2 as well. So it did sometimes get further than that, but yeah, generally reducing it to 1 is a good thing. You can then go further. Sunk cost, again a card in Unfathomable, discards a card from hand. If you name the right house, you get a token creature. Well, this has only got 1 house, it's only got Gormangeist. So you just sunk cost, name Gormangeist, you discard the 1 card it's got, goes away, and you've generated a token creature. This is just a win-win. That Gormangeist now has no cards to play, no new cards in its turn. And you've just generated a token. Brilliant. So that's why we had Unfathomable in all of our decks, for that mixtures of sunk cost, under pressure, and Fathom Reaver. Everything else was irrelevant in those decks. I mean, you played them if you got them, because like things like a Celt Miner as a 5-strength stick was fair enough. But in general, those are the 3 cards we're having Unfathomable for, and it's just to control the hand flow and the Reaver. Most of the time, you're actually in your aggressive deck, which is either the Saurian or the Brobnar. So that's how we controlled hand. We also had a Bio's Arch. Never really worked well for us, but it was there. If you don't know what Bio's Arch does, basically, instead of resolving their action card, it would have killed the leftmost of that player's creatures and cancelled the action card. We never really got it working well, but it was a nice enough idea. So I've talked about the base of the deck, how we controlled the deck with the Fathom Reavers and the sunk costs, how we control the board with the Grim Reaper, and what I should say is our decks with Brutodons and Berserkers, we were trying to build as many tokens as possible to basically kill its board and get its board down to as minimal as possible, whilst maintaining our own board state and building an ever and ever a bigger board. Why is that? Well, because at the end of the day, certainly if you want to go fast, if you also want to go consistent, you need a large board when you hit the end game. So that's what we're going to talk about now. End game. What happens in the end game? Well, you go up the stairway, or you get forced up the stairway by the cards. You get to what's basically a whole new bunch of rooms. So I'll show you the original ones. Here's the original ones. There we go. 4 new rooms for you. And they all basically bring into play extra powers. So, Sealed Odium. Once this is destroyed, this allows you to drain Dark Essence. So you need to kill that in order to actually get your win conditions going. It has 10 times the number of strength you need to damage to it over time as our players. So 30 in a normal game. When you destroy it, you'd flip it. And in the normal version, each player destroys a friendly creature and a friendly artifact for each essence in their essence pool. So how much essence you still have left would start blowing up your own creatures and artifacts. But this changes in the Nightmare mode to be a little different. Okay, so here's the new Sealed Odium. You've still got to destroy it to drain your Dark Essence, but this time its damage is 20 times the number of players. You need to do 60 damage to that. For us, that was basically 2 of us rule of 6ing our tokens, plus whatever creatures you had. But each time a creature deals damage to the Odium, destroy the attacking creature. So that's why we tend to be using tokens for it, because we just don't care. They're disposable. They go in, they attack, they do it. Maybe some of the other bigger ones in Saurian and Brobnar you'd use as well to just tick over that little bit of extra damage. But it generally took 2 turns of us rule of 6ing ourselves as how we got through the Odium. When you flip it, the new one says, for each essence in their essence pool, each player destroys a friendly artifact, discards a random card from their hand, and discards a random card from their archives. This is actually better, because it doesn't destroy the creatures. Yeah, it's just your artifacts. We didn't really care about artifacts. Losing the lens was annoying, but most of the artifacts didn't really do that much. A random card from their hand, well, okay, most of our strength is on our board. We don't really care about the hand again that much. Discard from archives. Well, we never really archived anything anyway, so this one's actually better for us than this one. And in general, once we've done this, we're actually about to win, and I'll tell you why in a moment. Grandfather Clock, 8 damage. Gormangeist draws 2 additional adventure cards each turn. You can flip it once you've done 8 damage to it, and you flip it over. Basically, Gormangeist having extra cards is not good. This is again this is the extra effect of how it's going to get 2 more. So it has a base of 3. There's an artifact in there for another 2. So this is enough. You could have 7 cards, which is pretty bad. Obviously, we've got the Fathom Reaver and some costs to help deal with that. We left this alone. We just left it because if you do kick it in, oops, sorry, no, got it wrong. This is the one we do kick in. Sorry. So yeah, this is the one we do kick in. But if you flip it over, it goes to the Ancestral Timekeeper, which is after Reap, put a time counter on Ancestral Timekeeper. If there are 3 or more on it, it drains 1 essence from everyone. So here you go. Here's the combo tech. This is again for speedrunners. What you do is you're going to deliberately trigger that, because when you deliberately trigger that, it drains from everybody. So if everybody has a Dark Essence, like we were doing, everyone has 3, of 1 each. That is effectively 3 turns in one, like that, done. Save yourself a huge amount of time. Deliberately let it reap. I'll tell you why that was so quick in a moment. There's other stuff coming in from Nightmare mode. But so yeah, we were actually, again, kick the Odeon in, and then instantly, if we can, put another 8 on this to kick it over, get the Ancestral Timekeeper into play. So I should have said these are the 2 we left alone. This one is the Grim Reaper is elusive. We don't really care. We're not really attacking the Grim Reaper that much. Let it be elusive. We don't want the bad stuff on the other side, which is a creature that does some stuff. It's like, nah, just leave it. And the next one was this one. Grim Reaper Friends is ready. Actually, that's to our advantage, because at the point at which we have done this, we're in our win state. We're in our end game. We have our Dark Essence. We probably want it to come in ready so it can drain the right person at the right time for us. So again, we just leave that alone. So Nightmare mode. There is another clock. You get an additional clock when you knock in, go up the stairway, as well as all these ones we've talked about for normal mode. You get this one, which is the Synchronizer, and it only really does one thing, which is at the start of each Gormangeist turn, put a time counter on the Synchronizer, and they can be used by all of the other Gormangeist clock cards, which is the ones on the other side of these. If you destroy it, you can flip it, and it basically each Gormangeist creature captures an amber, and then ready and use each of them that have got amber on them, and then destroy all your upgrades. It's like, who cares? We never flip it. We actually want the Synchronizer to be in play, because what it's doing is, when we first go up the stairs, we're probably not going to kill the Odium over here. We're probably not going to do that 60 damage in one turn. We actually want to space that out over a couple of turns. If we space it out over a couple of turns, 2 tokens get put on the Synchronizer, which means the Ancestral Timekeeper, when it comes into play, because it comes in ready, reaps, bang, it's going to crick off straight away. And that's basically our quick way of draining essence. As long as we've got everyone has one, it's going to come in, Synchronizer is going to have 2 on already, it's going to go for its 3rd, bang, it does it, everyone drains 1. And if we've managed to drain the additional 1 from the person who had 2 first, that's a win. That's your win straight there. If not, we're now trying to just finesse that one person to get their last essence off, which isn't that hard. We can just kill the Reaper to get its under pressure off it. It comes in ready on that person's turn and drains them. But yeah, again, this will save you minutes by using this combo to basically trigger a 3-person drain all at once. And then that's it. You've won. You've won at that point. So that's the deck. That's how you play it. That's some of the strategies we took to get through it fast. I've been talking about them as I go along, but yes, in general it was maintain a large board state, control the board by killing everything. Don't rely too much on things like archives and draw. Just lock yourself in one house. Use the endless passages to discard your cards to keep yourself in that house, and then just basically splash into the other houses. Things like Unfathomable to control the draw. Lock down the Grim Reaper, which is basically your lose state. And that's it. I'm going to put our decks, the alliance pods we put together, in the comments, so people can see what we did. I think the key cards there, most of them I've already mentioned, were the tokens we were using. 2 of us were using Berserkers, and the 3rd was using Bellatoran Warriors. Legionary Trainers in that deck, in order to make sure the Warriors came in ready to come in to attack. We had, I think, 3 under pressures across our decks just to make sure we got one and got it on the Reaper. We had, I think, 3 Reavers to lock its drawdown. We had 3 sunk costs, I think, maybe 4, to basically take that last card away and put a 1 in. So yeah, those are the sort of 6 main houses. The off houses in those decks, well, in the Saurian deck we had an Equidon deck, which is the one that was giving us the Bellatoran warriors, so we didn't have to have the training costs in the Saurian pod. It also had an auction off. I haven't spoken to them about them. There's a couple of artifacts. They're minor annoyances. They're not hugely impactful. They can slow you down a little bit. They're not really that bad. But if you get one of the real bad artifacts, like the draw 2 card artifact, or the broomstick out of here, or the one that just purges your creatures, it's good to have an auction off or something like that to get rid of it and get it out of the game in your Equidon pool. Similarly, one of the Berserker decks also had an Equidon pool, again to give it the Berserker pod, and also with auction offs in. Very, very handy. And the sort of third off pod was one of the Berserker decks, the one I was piloting, had a Star Alliance solely for the fact that there was a FOF transponder in there. For those not aware, you put the FOF transponder on your Berserker. When your Berserker dies, you get another Berserker. Of course, you can just sort of rinse repeat that until you run out of deck by attacking in or whatever's happening to your Berserker. So even though I might not have necessarily had a huge long board state, I could do a lot of attacks with it just by rule of sixing off the Berserker. So that's sort of decks, both the Gormangeist decks and our decks. I think one of our final points of how you get fast, if you want to do this fast, is everybody knows what's going on. They know what the cards in Gormangeist are. They know which are the threat cards. They know how to deal with them. So there's no hesitation. And one thing we did was when one person was doing their turn, the other person was basically, the person just gone was drawing up their hand and refilling, but the next person was getting ready to do the Gormangeist turn for the active player. So the active player can do all their sort of tidying up effects at the end of their turn, whilst the other player is starting to reveal the Gormangeist cards. And you do it fast, and you do it as a coordinated team, so everyone knows what everyone's doing. You say the cards, everyone knows what's happening. Decisions are made instantly. There is no hesitation, and everyone knows what how the board state is changing. But also, when someone needs to drain, you say drain because it's one of the cards that need to go now, and you do it. And you don't. If you have to stop to have a discussion, you're probably going to spend a minute or two on it. Now, certainly in our earlier runs, we were doing that as some of the other members of the team were learning the decks. I was the only one who'd really looked at this and looked at the key strategies to breaking it before we got to Minnesota. And hence our first runs were like 36 minutes, and then we went to 30 minutes, and then we went to 20, I think it was 26, 24, something like that. But the only way we got down to 10 minutes was basically by everybody just lightning quick and knowing what we were going to do, and knowing what the priorities to kill were, knowing what the cards to discard were, knowing which ones to resolve. We just all knew it, and we just did it out the bat. I think also it's fair to say on the 10 minute 34 run, we got very, very, very lucky in where the Dark Essence was in the Mansion decks. I think we only had to open, I think it was 8 of these Mansion to get our 4. Statistically, that's better than the odds would suggest. But mind you, then previous runs we'd had it go the other way. We just got lucky on that run. And luck is a really came into it because when we finished that run, 2 of us had no essence. We'd drained the Dark Essence with the Timekeeper. That was our last essence, and it was only because a card was revealed on it was George's turn that drained him of essence when he was the person who had the 1 Dark Essence left, if we chose to, that we won. In fact, we actually spent a bit of time debating. We thought we'd lost because we thought it was going to tick around to my turn. The Reaper was going to reap, and how I'd be lost to my essence. But actually, we realised no, we just did drain essence on that 1 action card, and we win. Again, phenomenally lucky. If that had been 1 turn out of sequence from that, we would have lost. Right at the final hurdle, we would have lost. But as it was, we didn't. So there you go. That's how we did our 10 minute 34 run. It's something that took perhaps about a quarter of the time it's taken me to talk through all this. I thought this would be quicker than that, but actually there was quite a bit to discuss and unpick in this. I absolutely say I must, thank you to Ghost Galaxy for doing this. I absolutely love these kind of puzzles created by decks and card interactions with the existing pool, and I really do look forward to seeing what the next one is and seeing if we can do that one in 10 minutes.